I found out my husband had a secret family, so I turned tables in the way he never expected. I used to believe silence in a marriage was just comfort, like two souls so in sync, words weren't always necessary. But now, I know some silences scream louder than betrayal. My name is Lisa Delaney, and the night my perfect life shattered started with a WW plus burr. Not a fight, not a confession, just a name. One that wasn't mine. It was around 2 a.m., the kind of hour where dreams and reality blur. Ethan was beside me, sleeping soundly. At least, I thought he was. That's when I heard it. Faint, but clear. "Sophia," he mumbled. My heart paused. My name is Lisa. Sophia is no one I know. Or so I thought. For a moment, I froze, caught between denial and paranoia. Maybe it was just a random dream. A coworker? An old friend? But the way he said it, soft, affectionate, familiar, it didn't feel random. I turned to him, watched his face. He looked peaceful. Peaceful in the middle of what felt like the beginning of my unraveling. The next morning, I tried to dismiss it. I made pancakes, the kind he liked, blueberry with a hint of vanilla, and casually asked, "Do you know anyone named Sophia?" He didn't flinch, just said, "Sophia? Can't think of anyone." That lie was too smooth, too fast. My gut twisted. And I've learned that when your body reacts before your brain can reason, it's already the truth. Something was wrong. I should have let it go. I should have swallowed the doubt like every other woman told to, trust your man. But I couldn't. Something about the way he kissed me that morning, quick, disconnected, felt like a curtain between us, and I wasn't standing in the light anymore. That night, when he left for a supposed client meeting, I opened his laptop. He always left it on the dining table like some silent trophy of trust. But I had never dared touch it. Until now. Password? Easy. Our wedding date. I should have known. Our marriage was his cover, not his commitment. I didn't find emails. He was smarter than that, but his browser had a saved address. An unfamiliar hotel. The same one he'd mentioned staying at on his last business trip. My pulse started to race. I clicked deeper. Reward points. Reservation dates. All aligning with his calendar excuses. Still, that wasn't proof. Not yet. But then I found the text. It was on his tablet, synced unknowingly to the cloud. From a kid's number. Just 4 words. "Night, Daddy. Love you." And a heart emoji. I stared at it for so long my eyes blurred. My throat tightened until I could barely swallow. Ethan doesn't have a child. At least not with me. If you're wondering how this all began, let me take you back to where it started. It wasn't when he said her name in his sleep. No. It started the day I believed him over myself. Every time I ignored that gut feeling, every time I justified his late nights, his sudden trips, his unreachable hours, I was helping him build his lie. But that night, something in me woke up. Something fierce. Something broken. And I wasn't going back to sleep. The next few days I played my part. Loving wife, sweet smiles, empty eyes. Inside, I was building a storm. I started tracking his moves. Not obsessively, but methodically. Receipts, mileage, timelines. I kept it all. And when he touched me, I smiled. But a part of me died. Every kiss felt like a bruise in disguise. Daniel, my best friend, noticed first. "You're quieter," he said. I shrugged. How do you explain that your soul is screaming while your lips stay sealed? I didn't tell him. Not yet. I needed time. I needed truth. Not just suspicion. One night, I stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "You deserve better." Not for motivation, but as a warning, to myself, to Ethan, because the woman I was becoming wasn't going to beg for honesty. She was going to take it. Piece by devastating piece. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments and hit that like and subscribe button to join me through this wild journey of betrayal and unexpected triumph. "This is only the beginning," he said another woman's name in his sleep. "But by the time I'm done, he won't sleep peacefully again. Because I'm not just uncovering the lie, I'm setting it on fire." I wanted to believe it was just a dream. A misfire in Ethan's mind, maybe. Stress, fatigue. But the name Sophia clung to my brain like smoke after a fire. No matter how many times I shook it off, it clung to my senses. Every kiss felt slightly colder. Every "I love you" rang slightly hollower. And then, I started noticing things. Subtle, almost invisible signs, like shadows in broad daylight. Ethan was always careful, meticulous even, but secrets have a way of slipping through even the smallest of cracks. I wasn't actively snooping, at least not at first. But sometimes, fate lays the evidence at your feet like breadcrumbs daring you to follow. It began one Saturday afternoon. Ethan said he had a client meeting in the city. Normally, I wouldn't question him. He was an architect, and his work did keep him busy. But this time, something didn't sit right. His cologne was heavier. He changed shirts 3 times. When I asked him what firm the client was with, he stumbled, then answered too quickly. That moment scratched at my mind like a needle on vinyl. I walked him out, waved goodbye, and then I went back inside and stared at the front door for what felt like an eternity. The silence of the house swallowed me whole. I tried to distract myself. I folded laundry, watered the plants, even attempted to finish the report due Monday. But when I passed by his office, something told me to look. His briefcase was still there. I opened the drawer slowly, hands trembling. There, buried under a sketch pad and some client folders, was a crumpled hotel receipt. The date? Last weekend, when he'd told me he was in Chicago for a conference. But this hotel was in Riverview, just 2 hours away. My stomach dropped. My fingers tingled as if they'd touched a live wire. It couldn't be, right? I didn't tell anyone. Not yet, not even Daniel. I needed more. I needed certainty. That evening, when Ethan came home, he was sweet. Overly sweet. He brought home my favorite sushi, poured me wine, rubbed my shoulders. It would have worked on me once, but now every smile felt like a lie sealed in cellophane. I smiled back, played my part. But something inside me had shifted. Trust was no longer automatic. It had to be earned, and he wasn't earning anything anymore. 2 days later, I went to put groceries in Ethan's car and spotted something beneath the passenger seat. I reached in and pulled it out. A small blue action figure. A superhero. Scratched, worn, clearly loved. I turned it over in my hand, my breath catching in my throat. We had no kids, no nieces, no nephews. Where did this come from? I felt like I'd touched a ghost. My heart raced as I placed it gently back and closed the door. A toy in his car. A hotel receipt. A name in his sleep. These weren't just red flags. They were sirens. I still hadn't said a word. My silence became my shield, my eyes sharper, my ears trained for lies. That same week, I checked our joint account and saw 3 identical charges. Same hotel, same location. 3 different weekends. My fingers went numb. The math was beginning to do itself. I wasn't losing my mind. I was catching his. That night, I sat in bed, Ethan beside me scrolling his phone. I pretended to sleep, my back to him, watching the flickering shadows on the wall. Suddenly, His phone lit up. A voicemail. I wasn't trying to pry, but when a child's voice echoed through the air saying, "Night, Daddy, love you," I stopped breathing. I closed my eyes tight, trying to force tears back into their cave. That voice wasn't a mistake. That voice was truth. Soft, young, full of innocence. And it didn't belong to any child I knew. Ethan didn't even flinch. He just deleted it, rolled over, and fell asleep. I lay there in the dark, heart pounding, tears slipping quietly onto my pillow. The betrayal wasn't just a possibility now. It was alive, breathing beside me. I had become a ghost in my own marriage. The life I thought I knew was a carefully constructed illusion, and I was the audience, applauding a magician who never deserved the stage. I didn't sleep that night. I watched him, listened to his breathing, and inside a fire was growing. Not rage. No, that would be too easy. It was something colder, more calculated. I wasn't going to scream or throw things. I wasn't going to beg for explanations. I was going to find the truth, cradle it in my hands, and let it carve out the path to my revenge. And so began my journey, quiet, measured, and dangerous. The breadcrumbs were no longer scattered. They were a trail, and I was ready to follow it wherever it led, even if it shattered me along the way. Because something told me, the real heartbreak hadn't even started. I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I was chasing a ghost I couldn't unsee. That voicemail of a boy calling Ethan Daddy didn't just pierce me. It split my reality in two. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. My chest felt like it was carrying someone else's heartbeat, someone else's agony. And no matter how many times I replayed that voicemail, I couldn't make it make sense. I had to see it. I had to see them. So I drove. 3 hours, city to city, watching the trees blur into smudged lines like the truth I was chasing. I used the address from one of Ethan's hidden credit card statements, one I'd found tucked in a jacket pocket he thought I'd never touch. I called in a sick day at work, but the only sickness I carried was betrayal. I'd packed a trench coat, a pair of oversized sunglasses, and my old college ID badge, because the lie I was about to live needed some kind of disguise. The neighborhood was painfully normal. Rows of townhouses, flower beds in full bloom, a swing set gently rocking in someone's yard like the world hadn't fallen apart. I parked 2 houses down, heart thudding like war drums. And then, I saw her. She stepped out with her son, Noah, I would later learn, carrying a Spider-Man lunchbox and wearing the kind of calm I hadn't felt in months. She was beautiful. Not threatening beautiful, but soft and warm, the kind of woman you trust instantly. Her laughter, even from across the street, made my stomach twist. Not out of jealousy, out of heartbreak. I followed from a distance, staying out of sight, hands trembling on the steering wheel. When they left, I did something I thought I'd never do. I walked up to the door and knocked. No plan. Just madness. The door creaked open a few seconds later. A woman, older, peeked out. Her mother, maybe? I smiled politely, using the fake name I'd rehearsed in the car. Hi, I'm with a local interior design firm. We're scouting homes for a community spotlight project. May I take a quick look at your entry layout? The lie tasted sour in my mouth, but it worked. She let me in. I only needed a moment. One glance at the photos on the wall, and there he was. Ethan, his arm around Sophia. A younger Noah on his lap. A fireplace flickering in the background like the scene was ripped out of some greeting card. Only it was a nightmare in disguise. I kept my composure somehow. I thanked her, gave her a fake business card I'd printed the night before, and left. But when I got back to the car, I shattered. I screamed. Into the steering wheel. Into the sky. into the silence that had wrapped around me for weeks and now threatened to swallow me whole. Ethan had a whole other life, a child, a woman who looked at him like he hung the stars. He didn't just cheat, he built a second kingdom while burning mine down in slow motion. And the worst part? They didn't know either. Sophia wasn't the villain. She was just as deceived. And Noah was innocent in all of this. I cried harder than I ever had. Not just for me. For her. For the child. For the years Ethan stole from all of us. I thought I'd hit rock bottom before. But this? This was the other side of the mirror, where every reflection was warped, and nothing was what it seemed. I drove away that day not as a wife desperate to fix her marriage, but as a woman reborn in fire. I wouldn't confront him. Not yet. No. I'd take my time. I'd learn the full truth, stitch by stitch, until the web he spun collapsed around him like an avalanche. That night, I called Daniel. I told him everything. His silence on the other end wasn't cold. It was furious, controlled, calculating. "You ready for the next step?" he asked. And I was. Because if there's one thing a woman like me learns after betrayal, it's this. Silence is no longer a wound. It's a weapon. And I was going to use mine with precision. I didn't scream at him. I didn't throw plates or rip through our house like a tornado. No, I did something far more terrifying. I became silent. Not the silence of surrender, but the silence of a storm that knows its time is coming. The kind of silence that watches, listens, and waits. Because Ethan had built 2 lives, and now I was about to collapse both with the weight of the truth he buried under charm and excuses. I met Daniel the next morning at a cafe we used to love back in college. He brought files, not flowers. Legal pads instead of comfort. But somehow it was the most loving thing anyone had done for me in weeks. He looked at me, not with pity, but with focus. "We're going to build a timeline," he said. "We need documentation, proof, facts. Emotion doesn't win in court. Evidence does." So we started. Every bank transaction I'd flagged. Every business trip that coincided with a visit to that other address. I created a spreadsheet with dates, expenses, lies disguised as meetings. I pulled phone records, hotel bookings, even photos from Facebook Sophia had posted publicly, celebrating anniversaries that overlapped with mine. I had to compartmentalize my pain. I had to become surgical, like my emotions were organs, and I was cutting them away to focus on survival. But every now and then, I'd break. I'd see a photo of Ethan holding Noah, and I'd just sit there, frozen, as if grief was a weight draped across my body. Daniel was my anchor. Calm, brilliant, ruthless in the way only someone who's seen your heart break slowly can be. He found ways to freeze accounts Ethan thought I didn't know about. He hired a private investigator, a woman named Patrice who wore boots tougher than any lawyer I've ever met. She followed Ethan for 2 weeks. What she found made me nauseous. There were more lies, more weekends away. Money funneled into Sophia's home, gifts, tuition payments for Noah's school, a man living 2 full lives. And he thought I was still smiling in the shadows, still waiting for him to come home with half-truths and wine. But I was done smiling. I started recording every conversation with him. Small talk over dinner became evidence. His casual stories became contradictions. He once told me he had a client meeting in Denver when Patrice had photographed him 2 cities away, picking Noah up from soccer practice. The lies weren't just cracks anymore. They were chasms. Ethan didn't notice. That was the most insulting part. I was no longer the woman he feared could hurt him, because he didn't think I could. He mistook my calm for numbness. He mistook my silence for forgiveness. And I let him. The hardest part? Lying to Sophia. I started messaging her anonymously. Slowly. Gently. I asked questions. Planted seeds. Has Ethan ever introduced you to his family? Do you know where he really works? I wanted her to see the trap she was in, not just fall into mine. Because she wasn't my enemy. She was collateral damage in Ethan's empire of deceit. And the child, Noah, deserved a better truth than the one being fed to him like sugar-laced poison. Every night I stared at the ceiling and whispered to myself, just a little longer. Because revenge isn't loud. It's not rushed. It's precise. A masterpiece painted in shadows and calm. I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to unravel every lie he ever told, thread by thread, until he stood naked in front of the truth. I began rewriting the narrative in my mind. No longer his wife. No longer his fool. I was something else now. A woman with clarity, rage stitched in silk, and a plan so elegant he wouldn't see it until it was too late. The world thought storms were loud. They were wrong. The deadliest ones move quietly until the thunder arrives. And Ethan? He had no idea the lightning was already on its way. There's a moment, right before a building collapses, where the air goes still. Like the walls know what's coming. Like even the light pauses out of respect. That's what I felt sitting at the restaurant, wine glass in hand, staring at the 2 empty seats across from me. One for Sophia, one for Ethan. I had orchestrated this dinner like a composer arranging a symphony of destruction. All the instruments were in tune. The curtain was about to rise. I had sent Sophia a message through a discreet account 2 days earlier. I told her I worked in PR and was vetting Ethan for a potential real estate collaboration. Harmless, innocent. She bit immediately. Said she'd be delighted to attend. Ethan's excited too, she wrote. He rarely includes me in his professional world, so this feels special. That broke me a little. Even now, she believed she was being let in, when really she was about to be let go. Ethan arrived first, smug and sharp in his tailored navy blazer, greeting me with the ease of a man still wearing his mask. He didn't question why I chose this rooftop restaurant, where the skyline wrapped around us like judgment. He didn't ask why I insisted we take the corner table facing the door. He was too busy being the charming fraud he always was. And then, she walked in. Sophia was radiant, in a soft blush dress, clutching her purse like it held the answers. Her eyes sparkled, hopeful and unaware. For one cruel second, I wished I could stop this, save her from the heartbreak. But then I remembered. We were both victims of the same lie. And it was time to turn the mirror on the man who shattered us. Ethan froze mid-sentence when he saw her. His smile cracked like cheap porcelain. "Sophia?" He choked, glancing between us like a man watching 2 ghosts walk out of his closet. Sophia blinked. "Wait, Lisa?" Her confusion turned to horror as she looked at me, then back at Ethan. Her hand trembled. "Why are you here?" I took a slow breath and met her eyes. "Because we've both been married to the same man," I said. "Only I have the paperwork." The silence that followed was heavy, like the universe itself inhaled and refused to exhale. Sophia's lips parted, but no sound came. Ethan, dear, manipulative Ethan, tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "Don't," I said. "Not tonight." I opened my purse and slid a thick folder across the table. Photos, statements, voicemails, the timeline Daniel and I had spent weeks compiling. Sophia flipped through them, each page tightening the knot in her throat. I saw it. The exact second her world cracked. A photo of Ethan kissing her on their anniversary. Same day, same year he claimed he was at a client retreat with me. "You said I was your one and only," she whispered. He reached for her, but she flinched. "Don't touch me." I turned to him then, calm, steady, my voice like cold steel. "You built your empire on lies, Ethan, but you forgot that every architect needs a foundation. And yours is crumbling." He stood, stammering about how this wasn't what it looked like, how he loved us both. It was pathetic. Watching a man so composed unravel in front of two women who had finally connected the threads he thought he could keep separate. "Love," I said, standing too. "You don't love anyone but yourself. You loved control, the game, the thrill of manipulation. But guess what? You lost." Sophia stood beside me. I didn't have to ask. We were united now. Two women, stitched together by betrayal, choosing not to be enemies, but survivors. I looked Ethan in the eye one last time. "This dinner? It's not a business meeting," I said. "It's your reckoning." And we walked out. Together. There's a moment after you shatter, after everything you believed about your life lies in ruins, when something unexpected blooms in the silence. Clarity. Cold, crystalline clarity. That's what I felt the morning after the dinner. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in my kitchen, coffee untouched, staring out the window while the world moved on, and I realized it was my turn to move through. Not as a wife or a victim, but as a woman reclaiming her power. Daniel was already waiting for me in his office that afternoon. Case files and documents fanned across his desk like war plans. "You sure you want to do this, Lise?" he asked softly. He knew the cost. Revenge takes something from you too. But I nodded. Because this wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about justice, about truth, about ensuring Ethan never got to do to another woman what he did to us. The first step was filing for divorce. Clean, sharp, swift. But it wouldn't be enough. Ethan had commingled funds, siphoned money into secret accounts, forged investment documents using my name. Fraud. Tax evasion. We were sitting on a volcano, and I was done shielding him from the consequences. Daniel moved like fire through legal channels. He subpoenaed records Ethan thought he'd buried. We found fake property transactions, offshore accounts, and a trail of signatures he never thought anyone would trace. Every lie became a nail in the coffin Ethan built with his own hands. Lillian, his mother, had the audacity to call me. "You're being dramatic," she said coldly. "Ethan's always worked hard to provide, so what if he made a few mistakes?" I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. He didn't make mistakes. He built a secret family, drained our assets, and lied to two women for 10 years. "This isn't drama, Lillian. It's exposure." She hung up. The courtroom was cold and sterile, but I felt fire in my chest as I walked in. Ethan wore his best suit, but he looked thinner, tired. His charm was gone, stripped bare by the weight of his own deceit. When the judge asked for statements, I stood tall. My voice didn't shake. "Your Honor," I began. "I believed in marriage, in love, in the vows we take and the homes we build. But this man used trust as currency. He built two lives, one in light, the other in shadow, and left innocent people drowning in both. I'm not just seeking divorce. I'm seeking accountability." Sophia sat behind me. She held Noah in her lap, his little head resting on her shoulder. She wasn't crying anymore. She was watching, learning, healing. Just like me. The ruling was swift. Ethan was found guilty of financial fraud and ordered to pay restitution. I was granted full ownership of the house, my rightful share of his firm, and monthly alimony. But the most satisfying part? The judge ruled that Sophia would receive full child support for Noah, with back pay calculated from birth. 10 years of lies now carved into law. Ethan's face was a portrait of disbelief. For once, he couldn't talk his way out of it. Couldn't smile, gaslight, or twist the truth. The justice system had finally spoken, and it spoke loud. Outside the courthouse, Daniel stood beside me. The sky had never looked so open. "How do you feel?" he asked. I looked at him and smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was free. "Like the storm passed," I said, "and left me stronger." And just like that, I walked away from the ashes of a life I didn't choose, into one I was finally building on my own terms. There's a kind of silence that isn't empty. It hums with resolution. That's what my world became in the weeks after the court verdict. A quiet I hadn't known in years. No more lies whispering beneath my floorboards. No more shadows crawling out of Ethan's phone at night. Just stillness. Just breathe. Just me. Sophia and I met once after the trial, in a little coffee shop tucked between bookstores and florists. She looked like someone rising from the rubble. Tired, but intact. We weren't friends, not really. But we were sisters in a war we never meant to fight. "I used to envy you," she confessed, eyes soft with truth. "You were the real wife, the one he brought to company parties and vacations. And now, I just pity him." That's when I realized, this story wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the parts of us he'd tried to erase. And the most powerful revenge was rising beyond his reach. A few weeks later, on Ethan's birthday, an idea bloomed inside me. It wasn't rage. It wasn't spite. It was clarity. A final chapter written not in screams, but in silence. I gathered the pieces carefully. One photograph, one message, and one truth he'd never outrun. I arranged for a courier to deliver the package. A small box. Inside it, a silver frame, smooth and elegant. The photo captured a moment Ethan would never witness. Me, Sophia, and little Noah, standing in the park, bathed in sunlight, smiling. Genuine. Unshaken. Whole. On the back of the frame, etched in clean cursive, were just 11 words. "We found each other. We don't need you anymore. No signature, no return address, just closure." Daniel called me that night. "Did you do it?" he asked, his voice half amused, half stunned. "I did," I replied, and I didn't flinch. We didn't talk about Ethan after that. His name lost its sting. Time, after all, is the most loyal revenge. It moves forward without apology. A few months later, I started a new job at a creative agency uptown. Fresh beginnings are quieter than I expected. They don't burst open. They bloom slowly, like forgiveness, like freedom. Daniel and I took long walks after work, never quite defining what we were becoming, but something between us had shifted. No longer unspoken, no longer hidden. Lillian tried reaching out once, a cold apology wrapped in excuses. I didn't respond, because some doors are meant to stay closed, some chapters, better left unread again. And Ethan? Last I heard, he moved to another city, his firm stripped down to fragments. The world no longer revolved around his charm. And I was no longer orbiting him. I stood in my living room one evening, wine in hand, watching the sunset bleed across the sky like a canvas. I thought about that girl I used to be, the one who ignored her gut, who smiled through red flags, who believed love was unconditional even when it cost her peace. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who walked through betrayal and didn't let it define her. A woman who turned pain into power, who didn't just survive the fire, she learned to control it. So if you're listening to this, wondering where strength begins, it's right there. In the moment you stop asking why they hurt you and start asking how you'll heal. in the decision to stop waiting for apologies and start writing your own ending. Because the best revenge isn't about making them suffer. It's making sure they never get the chance to break you again. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal or the crushing weight of silence, then you know this journey, this story, hits deeper than words. Lisa's strength reminds us that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about hurting others, but about reclaiming your own peace and dignity. If you're watching this and your heart's still healing, know you're not alone. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to join me on this wild journey of heartbreak, karma, and the ultimate revenge. Because here, every story has a voice, and every voice deserves to be heard. Until next time, stay strong, stay fearless, and remember, revenge isn't just a story. It's a storm waiting to strike.